Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Pillar. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Solar Center. Welcome to our webinar today, where we're going to be talking about the new apprenticeship requirements under the Inflation Reduction Act in order to get the tax credits for clean energy. Well, we welcome you and just want a couple housekeeping. If we invite you to put your name and your organization in the chat so that the speakers know who's here and you also know who's in the audience as well. So please do that. And if you do have a question, there's a question and answer, a Q&A function on the Zoom that you could write your question, and we will try to either type them or address them here with the speakers as we get started. So thank you so much for being here. A little bit about us first at the Pennsylvania Solar Center. Our vision is that Pennsylvania does become a leader in renewable energy again through the rapid expansion of in-state solar and other clean energies. And our goal really is to provide the benefits of solar to all Pennsylvanians. And we're very thankful for our financial supporters, the Hillman Foundation, the Heinz Endowments, and the Richard King Mellon Foundation, as well as many other our corporate sponsors and individuals as well. So if you want to join the list, we're happy to have you. Just let us know, reach out, we'll help you do that. I always talk about our three-legged stool at the Solar Center. To give you an idea about what we do. So we do provide technical assistance to the commercial sector, I mean nonprofits, businesses, schools, nonprofits, to help them go through the whole solar procurement process. And we spent a lot of time doing education and outreach and public awareness about solar and providing resources for all solar stakeholders. And you can find a lot of those resources on our web. And of course, then our policy arm of our organization too. And that technical assistance is really through our Get Solar program, where we help these businesses and organizations to go solar. We assess their solar potential and then put bids out to developers to help them to understand what the potential is for them. So far, we've had over 52 entities that we've put bids out for, and we have seen a completed project of over 2 megawatts, and we have really another 10 megawatts in our queue and that are waiting to go through and making decisions and financing around the Inflation Reduction Act as well. And we've just recently launched the Get Solar community, and some of those projects have been through this. Last year, Meadville and the tri-boroughs of Etna, Millville, and Sharpsburg were the pilots of where we're actually working within the communities with leadership there to inspire their businesses and organizations, schools, and other entities to go solar within those communities. And then this past year, this past November, Indiana Borough and Indiana County, Wilkinsburg, Carnegie, and McCandless Township have come into this program, and so they're in the process. We are going to be launching 2 more rounds this year, and so this spring will be another. So if you have a community, you live in a community, and you want them to participate in the Get Solar Communities program, look out for that, and we will be happy to talk to you about that. And we're also partnering with Generation 180, which is another nonprofit organization. And in partnership with them, we are doing outreach to schools and providing free technical assistance to schools across the state. So it's a really fun, exciting program. If you do have a school, your kids go to school, and think about getting them on board as well. Again, lots of education, like we do the Watson Learn, of course, our newsletter, our Lodestar Award program, and other resources that you can find on our website. And we really encourage everybody, if you haven't done so, please follow us on social media. That helps us get the word out. And then I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Government Affairs, Matt Mahoney, and also want to thank Matt for he does a lot of our webinars, but really did everything to pull this webinar, which was a lot of work to talk about apprenticeships because there's many people still learning about what we need to do to make these things happen and available throughout the industry. So it was a big lift to pull this together. And so thanks a lot, Matt, for your help.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate everybody being here and tuning in. And hopefully we can increase awareness and education on these key policy issues as they develop. So before digging into the apprenticeship requirements, and just want to note that Sharon will be enabling the chat function here momentarily. So thanks for those that chimed in there. So name's Matt Mahoney, as Sharon mentioned, Director of Government Affairs, and really focused on policy advocacy and education so that we can support a robust solar industry here in Pennsylvania. For this coming session, so we're now in a new legislative session, 2023 to 2024, and our priorities for this session shouldn't come as a surprise, but certainly an opportunity for us to take some good steps towards increasing or strengthening our solar policies in Pennsylvania. So our first priority is increasing renewables to 30% by 2030 and utilizing the alternative energy portfolio standard. As many of you may know, there are other proposals that have been floated around this past session, and we've been working with a lot of advocates, industry representatives, and legislators to learn about what the field looks like. And we understand there's strong interest in advancing a policy proposal that focuses on the alternative energy portfolio standard. And as we know, those goals within the AEPS are outdated and are in desperate need of revitalization. So we're working with, as I mentioned, stakeholders to increase those goals and ensure that we can see a stronger AEPS here in Pennsylvania. Our second priority that we're focusing on this session is enabling community solar. It's been a hot topic of conversation in Pennsylvania, which is fantastic. And we're really working to ensure that whatever community solar proposal does advance, that it aligns with current systems that are already in place and that we're not recreating the wheel, that we're creating a program that does what community solar is intended to do, is increase access to the benefits of solar for all. And ensuring that those costs aren't impacting ratepayers in a negative way, and we're actually leveraging the benefits of solar by utilizing more of the lowest cost of energy on the market today. And then last, always defending against unfriendly solar policies. And that includes educating legislators, reaching out to legislators. That's a big part of my job, is communicating and educating legislators and their staff on what good solar policy should be, and making sure that we're doing what we can to protect the market and embolden strong policies that support the solar industry's growth. So next slide. Next slide includes, in the past, we've included our legislative guide, and we are updating it as we speak to include this session's legislative proposals that would impact solar. So be on the lookout for that. And we're also, of course, working to ensure that all stakeholders are informed of how solar development can take place. So we've been working with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services on the development of guidebooks for landowners as well as municipal leaders, ensuring that those stakeholders are well informed of standard practices and best practices when solar comes into their neighborhoods. Next slide. So as I mentioned, updating that legislative guide, but just to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things that have been introduced this session, we've already seen a few Senate bills referred to committee, and most of these bills have been introduced in previous sessions. So there's sort of a template that we can look to see what is included there. So Senate Bill 31 was previously Senate Bill 826 from the last session, which makes explicit the homeowners that are a part of the homeowners association have the right to install solar panels on their property's roof. Another proposal that was introduced recently, Senate Bill 61, which was previously Senate Bill 218 from the last session, focuses on exemptions of taxation at the sale of retail or at the installation, maintenance, or repair of a solar device. Similar proposals from last session were introduced, and we're keeping track of those. A few co-sponsorship memos that have been circulated that are similar from last session: the sale of alternative energy credits, prevailing wage for green energy projects, decommissioning and bonding, and a new proposal was introduced, or a co-sponsorship memo circulated, that would provide a grant program for Pennsylvania schools to go solar. So just some updates, just so you're aware of the things taking place right now in our General Assembly. Now, focusing on the task at hand, we want to seize the opportunity, and there's a great amount of opportunities here in Pennsylvania to bolster the solar industry. So we know that just going 5% solar would create 30,000 plus jobs and create billions of dollars of investment in Pennsylvania. There's a real economic argument to be made for supporting strong solar policies, and we're working with legislators and would love more support from you all to ensure that our legislators understand these economic opportunities. We see cost savings. We know that there's cost savings across the board. With 5% solar, we start to see wholesale prices start to decrease, and energy diversification keeps the grid accountable and keeps prices stable for ratepayers. And recognizing Pennsylvania's agricultural heritage, many see solar as a farmland preservation tool, ensuring that that land remains in the hands of farmers instead of selling land for other developments such as low density housing and other development projects. So we want to make sure that we're bolstering solar and supporting those stakeholders that see the benefits of solar as well. So moving on to the Inflation Reduction Act, that's why we're here, to talk a little bit more about what the Inflation Reduction Act new requirements include. And we know that there are a number of different opportunities that have been emboldened by the Inflation Reduction Act. And IRA is commonly referred to as the largest investment in clean energy solutions, and an investment that will expand the workforce opportunities and pathways for these jobs. And the inclusion of apprenticeship provisions enables a talent pipeline for developing this critical workforce and ensuring that this is an industry-driven approach and provides high-quality career pathways for workers. We'll talk a little bit about what registered apprenticeships are and how employers can develop and prepare their future workforce and ensure that we're meeting the requirements so that solar developers can access that increased tax incentive. Next slide, our little disclaimer. To ensure, noting that I am not a tax professional, nor is anybody at the Pennsylvania Solar Center a tax professional, and these are tax-related issues that we're covering. So if you do have specific concerns or making applications, we highly advise you to consult a tax professional before making those decisions pertaining to any information that's included in this presentation. So with that said, let's dive into some of the details. So as we know, the commercial investment tax credit, as well as the production tax credit, include requirements for accessing that 30% tax credit. So with the changes that were made by the Inflation Reduction Act, we see that the base credit was made at 6%, and to access that 5 times multiplier to get to that 30%, facilities with a max net output of greater than 1 megawatt AC must meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. The same goes for the production tax credit, which is on the next slide. And this is just to indicate, this is just to level set, and these are the issues that this is the topic at hand that we're talking about today. So the investment tax credit and the production tax credit requirements for apprenticeships. So I think I've teed up the issue well enough to let's start digging into some of the details. And I will say that this is high level and based on most recent guidance. So in basic terms, the Inflation Reduction Act's apprenticeship requirements for increased tax, to access that increased tax benefits, the 30%, a taxpayer or a project developer must ensure that a certain number of labor hours for construction, alteration, and repair, including work performed by contractors and subcontractors, must be performed by a qualified apprentice, expressed as a percentage of total labor hours for that construction, alteration, and repair. So we see that when construction begins begins before January 1, 24 and after 12/31/22, so the time frame that we're in now, would be 12.5% of total labor hours would be needing to be met by apprenticeship or apprentices, qualified apprentices. And then we see it ratchet up when construction begins after 12/31/2023. Additional requirements, moving on to the next slide. The ratio requirements for the apprentice to journeyman or journey worker ratio is required similarly to the United States Department of Labor and Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that 4 journey workers to 1 apprentice ratio must be met. Participation, each taxpayer, a contractor or subcontractor who employs 4 or more individuals that perform the construction, alteration, or repair must employ 1 or more qualified apprentices. So again, similar to that ratio that was mentioned. So as many are figuring this out and learning more about what these requirements are, there is an exception made for good faith efforts to access those resources for apprentices. So if, for example, a request has been denied by a qualified apprenticeship program, and the denial is not a result of refusal by the entity that's requesting those apprentices, then as long as you're documenting those instances and submitting that with your application, that should satisfy those requirements. Also, if no response from those qualified apprentices is received, or apprenticeship programs is received within 5 business days, then that is considered a good faith effort to access those qualified apprenticeship programs. These apprenticeship requirements take effect on January 29th, 60 days after the guidance was, or the initial guidance was released on November of 2022. And we are expecting more federal guidance from both the IRS and the Department of Treasury. So stay tuned for more updates and more guidance as it comes out. And we'll next, I'll talk a little bit about some of the definitions that are called out by this initial guidance. So next slide. Very simple. What is a qualified apprentice? As per the legislation and as per a pretty strong precedent, a qualified apprentice is an individual employed by a taxpayer, contractor, or subcontractor who is participating in a registered apprenticeship program under the National Apprenticeship Act. And you might be wondering, what is the National Apprenticeship Act? And on the next slide, we can see that those requirements are outlined in our Code of Federal Regulations, Part 29. And I didn't pull out the entirety of this, but I did include a link to this regulation, which I found to be very useful in conceptualizing and better understanding what the frameworks are that already exist for apprenticeship programs, and how to meet the letter of the law for this requirement. So the National Apprenticeship Act directs the Secretary of Labor, the Federal Secretary of Labor, to formulate programs, develop standards, bring employers and labor together, and cooperate with state agencies to bolster apprenticeship programs. This regulation also outlines the procedures for how to register an apprenticeship program and the criteria for what is an apprenticeable occupation. There's also language on how to develop an apprenticeship agreement with employees, as well as an outline of the equal employment opportunity requirements that are part of actually Part 30 of that regulation. So I highly encourage you to take a look at that piece of information if you're interested in learning more about what the structure of a qualified apprenticeship program looks like. On the next slide, I just included, so we know that on November 30th, the Treasury and the IRS published initial guidance on the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. The publication of the guidance on November 30th started that 60-day period. So the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements will be operative for facilities where construction begins on or after January 29th, 2023. That's 60 days after that November 30th publication of guidance. And so you'll notice this is initial guidance, and that that, as I mentioned, we should expect more guidance to be coming from these entities, these federal agencies, as the program continues to roll out. So I pulled out a bit of the important pieces and some of the definitions that were included in this initial guidance. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see that there is guidance on how to calculate the beginning of construction, which is important for meeting those percentage requirements of labor hours, as well as prevailing wage. So there are two methods to establish the date of construction, and these are based on similar programs and are programs that have been in place for some time. So when establishing the date, the beginning of construction, it can be marked by starting the physical work or both. I'm sorry, these two methods by starting physical work of a significant nature, and that is defined within the physical work test and can be different based on the size of a project and other characteristics. But then also having paid or incurred 5% or more of the total cost of a facility, which again can be calculated differently and is dependent on the different types of work that is being performed. So in some cases, design and engineering, the front end work is not included in some of these tests. So I would certainly recommend coordinating and communicating with a tax accountant to ensure that you're meeting the requirements of these tests. And for both tests, there's this continuous construction or continuous effort continuity requirement to ensure that when the facility is placed in service within that specific time, the work is continuous and isn't stopping and starting. So reporting requirements, of course, will be coming from that, from the IRS and Secretary of Treasury as well. So the other big piece that was taken from that initial guidance, the next slide is recommended record keeping, which shouldn't come out of left field. Again, taxpayers must keep records necessary to show the amount of any credit or deduction claimed. So when making claims that you've met these requirements, met the apprenticeship requirements, that you're utilizing longstanding tax reporting rules to track that information in a consistent manner. So taxpayers intending to rely, and this is important for the good faith effort exception that I mentioned previously. So if making those good faith efforts or applying for those good faith effort exemptions, keeping records reflecting those efforts, such as documenting that you've made calls to apprenticeship programs and you have not received a response, and listing out those registered apprenticeship programs that you've been coordinating with and working with. So with that said, that's sort of the high level overview of some of the apprenticeship programs and the guidance that's been provided thus far. If we move on to the next slide, we'll see that there are a lot of resources that exist, and especially within our labor unions. So we know that the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Laborers, International Union of North America, United Brotherhood of Carpenters, Independent Electrical Contractors, Associated Builders and Contractors, and Associated General Contractors are all important pieces of this workforce pipeline that we're describing. So again, we're not recreating the wheel here. We can rely on some resources in the time being to ensure that we're meeting those requirements and maximizing those benefits, working with labor partners through the process. And in the same vein of providing resources, the next slide includes a link that I thought was important, and I gathered a lot of information from this website itself. So the Inflation Reduction Act apprenticeship resources, I highly encourage you to check out this website, the link at the bottom as a follow-up to gain some more insights. There's a great amount of FAQs and other information available. The next slide, I didn't mention this previously, but part of the National Apprenticeship Act includes state apprenticeship agencies, and those the agency in Pennsylvania, who we're very happy to have with us, the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industries Apprenticeship and Training Office, is the designated state apprenticeship agency in Pennsylvania, and we'll hear more from this great resource in Pennsylvania here in a little bit. But just wrapping up, if you do have any questions, I highly encourage you to either reach out to us with those questions or follow up directly through the U.S. Department of Labor's Offices of Apprenticeship. I've reached out a number of times over this past couple of weeks in preparing for this webinar and have received responses from this federal website or federal email address. So if you do have questions that you'd love to have answers to, or at least guidance or be directed towards where those answers may be, I encourage you to reach out to this email address, apprenticeshipira@dol.gov. And then last slide of mine just includes, I'm sorry, one more slide, includes a list of resources that I've pulled out from the apprenticeship, the IRA apprenticeship program website, as well as some others on guidance and an overview of the Inflation Reduction Act to be certain that we have a good repository of resources as we're continuing to learn and figure out what these requirements are. So with that said, let's turn it over to our expert speakers to provide a bit more information on the resources that already exist and the opportunities that exist. And so I'll just quickly review on today's webinar. We have Bill Miner, apprenticeship training representative in the Apprenticeship and Training Office at the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. We're also joined by Allison Deal, Executive Director for the Clean Energy Center at the Pennsylvania College of Technology. And we also have Colleen Kettles, Director of Workforce and Business Development at the Florida Solar Energy Center at the University of Central Florida, who actually stood up the first solar apprenticeship program in the country. So excited to have these speakers and excited to kick it off with Bill Miner, Apprenticeship Training Representative with the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. So Bill, I'll kick it off to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, so my name is Bill Miner. I am with the Pennsylvania Apprenticeship Training Office. So let's go next slide. And next slide after that. So let's start off with the basics of what an apprenticeship is. An apprenticeship is a way for employers to invest in their workforce and close the skills gap. The big thing is that it is employer-driven, learn while you earn structured training model specific to an occupation. So this means that apprenticeships have a structured component where the apprentices will learn the job on the job front, and then they will also have supplemental instruction on the side. We call that the related technical instruction. They are both components of the apprenticeship, and it is specific to an occupation. So I'm going to go into that in a little more detail in a little bit. Next slide, please. So there are three parts to an apprenticeship. There is the sponsor, the employer, and the RTI provider. The sponsor is the one developing the training plan for the apprenticeship. They find the providers, they register the program, they establish an apprenticeship and training committee if you choose one, and they monitor the apprentice progress and keep information updated in Rapids, the online apprenticeship database system. So basically, they're the ones who oversee the program. They are the administrative infrastructure of the program. The employer is is one of the most important parts of the apprenticeship. They're the ones who hire the workers, provide the on-the-job training, identify experienced mentors to work with the apprentices, and they do pay a wage. Apprentices are paid from the beginning of the program. That is one of the defining features of an apprenticeship and what separates it from a co-op or an internship or something like that. And the third component is the RTI provider. RTI stands for Related Technical Instruction, and they provide the supplemental instruction alongside that. That can be provided either during training hours or outside of work hours as well. The three components here, the sponsor, the employer, and the RTI provider, can be three different organizations. They can be the three same organizations, or you can have one organization playing the role of a sponsor and employer, sponsor and RTI, employer and RTI. There's different configurations you can have. Typically, it would look like either an employer or a school or a nonprofit organization would act as a sponsor. They would have employer, and then someone, another school would provide the RTI. The big thing here is that you can have more than one employer in a program. So if you have a small program with only a few programs, a few workers, and you don't think you can take on the responsibility of being the sponsor, you can join an existing program as a group model, in which case you would just provide the on-the-job training and the wages, and the sponsor would take care of everything else. Next slide, please. So the benefits here, these are some of the benefits: demonstrated return on investment, improved recruitment, lower turnover, increased productivity, and retaining your company's expertise. These are all things that, these are just some of the benefits. There are many, many more benefits to an apprenticeship, but these are some of the documented benefits to an apprenticeship, because the apprenticeship allows you to take the apprentices and really transfer your institutional knowledge, institutional culture to the apprentice, because the apprentice is linked to a mentor, which allows them to answer the questions, and it gives them a better idea of feeling involved in the company, keeping the lower retention lower turnover, by allowing them to really feel part of the process and to really feel supported by the company. It's a great way of just showing your workers that you are there to help them during the process. Next slide, please. So there are a few key components to apprenticeships that I've mentioned before, but I'm going to go a little more detail right now. Next part is, it's a paid job. Apprentices are paid employees. From the start of the program, they are paid. Next, and the pay increases as they learn the new skills. So an apprentice will not start off with earning the full wage in the beginning. While they're still learning the ropes, they will earn a certain percent of the entry wage. So for example, they would earn 60–70% of the wage until they learn more skills. As they learn more skills, their pay increases. This way, a company is not paying full wages for someone who cannot do the full job. As the apprentice grows, so does their wage. The on-the-job learning, the OJL, otherwise known as OJT, we use both phrases interchangeably. This is a structured training of curriculum. So you're making sure that every apprentice is taught the same way, that they are learning the same things. It's a very good way of showing the apprentices what to do, how to do it, how you want them to do it as the employer. This is very much an employer-driven model. So the whole point here is that employers are deciding what they want to teach the apprentices and how they want to teach the apprentices. This is not the government coming in and saying, we're going to tell you how to run your business. We are listening to the employer and saying, what do you want your workers to know? What do you want your workers to learn? Next, please. There is a minimum of 2,000 hours of on-the-job learning each year. So this year means that it's 2,000 hours roughly equates to 1 year of full-time work. So we're looking at jobs that require full-time work for at least a year of learning. So we don't want jobs that take less than a year. We're looking for jobs that take at least a year. And the OJT is enhanced with the RTI. This can be held virtually in a classroom through synchronous learning, asynchronous learning. It's just there to help them along there. And if you go next, you'll see that it must be a minimum of 144 hours a year for the RTI, the related technical instruction. The mentorship. This is my favorite part of the apprenticeship. This is the knowledge passed from staff to new staff. This is kind of leads so that apprentices are not just left to go to their own devices and are left to learn the job and just kind of sink or swim. They actually are supported throughout the entire process. They get a mentor who's there to help them learn the company, to learn the job, and the mentor is there to help them succeed and to thrive in their job. Next. And the credentials. Upon successful completion, each apprentice will earn a nationally recognized certificate. This is called the Journey Worker Certificate, and it is a portable certificate. That means that the apprentices are now certified in that field, and they can move on to, they can go to other jobs if they need, but it's a way for the apprentices to say, yes, I can do this job. Next slide. The first thing you want to do with an apprenticeship, as I mentioned before, you want to find the occupation. So actually, I'm going to do right now. We're going to go to apprenticeship.gov here. Okay. So if you go here to apprenticeship.gov, I'm hoping you.
Sorry,
yes.
Bill. Can you share your screen?
I'd be happy to. I thought I did.
There you
Can
go.
you see my screen now? Excellent.
Yep, there it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you go to apprenticeship.gov, you can go to resources and occupation finder here. From here, scroll down to search by occupation and type in an occupation here. We can go with solar engineer for an example. Click search, and it will then tell you what the job can do here. Now, in this case, solar engineer is not an approved occupation. If it was, you would have a list right here. I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. Let's go to welder. If you have the right here with this little yellow star and this list of titles right here, this is an approved occupation. Meanwhile, for solar, we do not currently have one, but this is where you would find that information here.
So Bill, can you just clarify, there's no any of the solar installer or technician?
Correct. At this point right now,
so
there are no jobs currently approved. If we can go back to the PowerPoint, though, I can explain what happens in this case, because all hope is not lost. So first thing you want to do is check apprenticeship.gov. This would give you examples of work processes. If your occupation is not registered, you can still use the apprenticeship model. In that case, what you want to do is you would want to contact your apprenticeship training representative. You will be assigned one once you enter the process. And they're going to go through what's called an apprenticeability occupation checklist, otherwise known as the AOC. The AOC looks to prove that the apprenticeship can be done. We look at 5 components. Is this job something that can be done on a regular basis? Will this take a year-long process? Does it require supplemental instruction? And things of that nature. So if you're looking at any kind of solar technician, any kind of solar jobs, you will have to look into completing the AOC, which means here it might take a little bit longer in the process. So we do recommend, if you are interested in apprenticeships, start the process early so we can get you going here with the time frame that Matt mentioned earlier. So moving to the next slide. So 4 main steps of the apprenticeships. The first step is select your occupations. Which occupation are you looking for? Which specific occupation? Since this is a brand new occupation, we want to develop the on-the-job learning curriculum. So what are you going to teach the apprentices per year? We have 2,000 hours here as a minimum. Apprenticeships can go from 1 to 6 years. So if you take more than 1 year, that is fine. We just need 2,000 hours as the minimum, and you want to develop the RTI and the OJT curriculum for each year that you want to teach the apprentices. You want to complete the paperwork. You can find the paperwork. You find the paperwork here by going to one of our bi-weekly apprenticeship orientations. They are held every other Friday. And this is a basic idea of how apprenticeships work. You will sign up for that by going to our information request form, which is an online form. You would select which date you would want to attend. And once you attend that, you would then get your paperwork and you can start working on the standards, any appendices in the paperwork, and all of that. Throughout the whole process, you do have an ATR working with you to answer any questions, to help you with the documentation. So you are not doing this alone. The ATO is here to help you every step of the way. And we're here to help you, to help shepherd the program into existence. So we help you throughout the whole process. Once you've completed the paperwork, you would then submit it to the ATO for review. And then once we complete our review internally, we would then present it to the Pennsylvania Apprenticeship and Training Council for review. The council meets once a month, and they will review the packet, ask questions, and they will work to approve your program. Once you've gotten your program approved through the council, it's time to launch your program. This means you would access the sponsor would access the Rapids database, look into potential funding, recruit apprentices, and track progress. The sponsor, again, is the one in charge. So this could be the employer, or it could be a different agency, such as a school or a nonprofit. So we allow for, there are different models for companies that want to do it themselves and companies that would like to join a group model. Now I'm going to touch upon pre-apprenticeships. Pre-apprenticeships is designed for people who are not yet ready to enter the workforce, either because they are, for example, populations would be high school students, career transitioners, or someone who's not yet in the workforce. A pre-apprenticeship looks to assist individuals in obtaining fundamental skills needed to enter the apprenticeship. So this works before the apprenticeship to teach them the skills that they need to enter the apprenticeship. So an example here would be an apprenticeship looking at construction, specific occupations such as solar technician, welding, engineer, things like that. The pre-apprenticeship would work to teach them the basic skills ahead of time, measuring, tool use, anything like that. It is curriculum focused rather than employment focused. It can be used as a transition to enter the apprenticeship, and it can be also used in high schools. So for example, a program starting in high school would start teaching and exposing students to different ideas in the solar workforce, teaching them the skills, getting them interested, connecting them to the company, and then entering from there into the apprenticeship. And so it creates a nice pipeline there for people looking to develop a workforce. And that's the big thing about the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship is there to design and develop the workforce. It's meant to benefit the employers by giving them talent, by developing their talent, by transferring their knowledge to the new workers, and by allowing them to thrive and succeed through the mentorship, through the support, the RTI and the OJT support. Okay, next slide. You can check out our website, PA Career Link. We have a website here, Registered Apprenticeships. I'm going to share my screen again if I can. You go here to the website, you can then scroll down here And we have success stories here. We have all the information. We have a list of who the ATRs are by region. And if you scroll down here, you'll find Pennsylvania Apprenticeship Act that Matt mentioned earlier. We have a link right here. We have Pennsylvania regulations. And if you go up here again, you can check out, you want to create a registered apprenticeship program. This is here, the basics. Again, with the steps here. And we also have resources. We have quick guides for employers and partners, employer needs assessments, starting your apprenticeship quick guide here, practices, a checklist, guides for employers. And these are all the appendices here, the standards, the appendix A, B, C, and all the rest here that you would have to look into that I mentioned before. I know it looks really intimidating, so I will let you know what you actually have to fill out here. Standards, you would have to fill out Appendix A and A2. Appendix B, you only need to fill out once you have an apprentice. Until then, you don't need to fill out this one. C, you only need for 5 or more registered apprentices. Before then, you don't have to fill that out. Same thing with the affirmative action workforce analysis and Appendix D. So if you're just starting off with a new program, you can skip these 3 sections here. Appendix E is for any employer acceptance agreements. These are only for group programs. So you have to fill out one of these here for that. And Appendix G is the program summary. So it's not as much as it looks. You only need to look at standards A, E, and G. Those are the only ones you have to fill out. And these are just work process templates as well for time-based competency hybrids, job books, etc. Now, going back to the PowerPoint. So that's all located there at a PA Career Link Registered Apprenticeship. Please check us out here. This PowerPoint is meant to be an introduction. You're not meant to know everything after this. So please, any questions, check out the website there. You might be able to find your answers on the resources tab, or we can move to the next slide. You can find out more. Again, attend our presentation. It's an email here at apprenticeship@pa.gov. The email that Matt shared earlier was for the federal government of apprenticeships. This is for the state government for apprenticeships. So we are both always here to help, and we can help answer any questions. Please feel free to email us with any questions you may have. And if you are interested in attending, please send an email to that resource account and say, I want to find out more about apprenticeships. We'll get you onto the list, and we can then attend the program from there and get you started in the process. And again, we are always here to help you throughout the process. We're here to help you succeed in developing this program. And then next slide. Thank you for attending. At this point, are there any questions? I don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat. Are there any questions?
Well, we'll accumulate those questions as we go. Definitely appreciate your contributions, Bill. And if you could, the links that you were reviewing on the website, if you could put those in the chat for everybody, I think that would be greatly appreciated. Those are great resources.
I'd be happy to.
Thanks so much, Bill. And if we do have questions, we'll pass it along. But next, we'd like to move on to Colleen Kettles, Director of Workforce and Business Development for the Florida Solar Energy Center. And apologies, Colleen is working remotely today, and she's a dedicated contributor. So her screen is not going to be able to be shown, but certainly interested to hear more about the first solar apprenticeship program that was stood up in the United States. So Colleen, I'll let you take it from here to introduce yourself more and take it away.
All right, thanks. I'm Colleen Kettles. I'm the director at the Florida Solar Energy Center, which is an institute of the University of Central Florida, director of the Workforce and Business Development Division. We've had a very long history of doing training with the solar energy industry, as well as the energy efficient building industry. So next slide. So yes, we are very proud to say that we had the very first, and at the time only, solar apprenticeship program in the country registered with the U.S. Department of Labor. Now, that happened because Florida can approve apprenticeship programs and register them with the U.S. Department of Labor. So I just want to be clear, the U.S. Department of Labor did not approve and register our program. It was approved by the state of Florida. And that's really the only way, I believe, any apprenticeship programs have been approved thus far, or solar apprenticeship programs have been approved thus far. Since that time, we've had a couple of other programs approved in Florida, but they're more geared towards utility scale. So our program was a partnership between the Florida Solar Energy Center and the Florida Solar Energy Industry Association. And because we have a solar contractor license in Florida that includes both PV and solar thermal, we designed the program to be a pathway to that solar contractor license. So that's a little different than a lot of programs. We basically took two distinct occupational titles, that of the solar PV installer and the solar thermal installer and technician, and merged them into a single occupation, that of the solar energy technician. So that was a bit of a challenge too, because typically they do not, don't allow you to blend two occupational titles for the program. So the industry is recruiting employers and posting the jobs. FSEC is developing and producing online training and instructional materials. And because this is a statewide program, meaning that, you know, we don't have a single county that's sponsoring the program or offering the program, we're making sure that the training is available online. And we also are working with local and state community colleges to develop classroom instruction. So let's see. So the FLACIA is now, as I said, recruiting employers. They're making this program a member benefit for FLACIA members, and FLACIA membership is required in order to become a participating employer. So next slide. So when we started developing this program back in November of 2020, and it took us until February of this year to get the program approved. We did it deliberately, very slowly and carefully, because we wanted it to be approved. So I'm just going to call out some of the really important partnerships that need to be developed early on if you're going to develop a successful program. Clearly, solar industry participation and leadership is essential, because apprenticeships are industry-driven programs, and they need to respond to industry needs for employee training. Clearly, you need the educational providers to develop the curriculum and deliver the related technical instruction that Bill mentioned. The State Apprenticeship Agency, I cannot tell you how important that agency is, along with your apprenticeship training representative. We would not be here today without those two groups. Workforce Board, which in Florida we have, they're called Career Source offices. Basically, your workforce board that gets federal funding from the Department of Labor to support employers in terms of on-the-job training, as well as pay and salaries. They are there to help you financially support the apprenticeship program. And then the State Department of Education, which is where our state apprenticeship agency is located. We don't have a State Department of Labor. The State Department of Education also has resources. We just received a grant in the amount of almost $300,000 for a one-year effort to really build out our apprenticeship program. So, you know, funding is really critical, because I believe it's a federal law. I don't know if it's just Florida. Apprentices cannot pay for their education. So if you have an apprenticeship program in a community college, the employer has to pay that tuition. So these are all things that we learned in the process, and I'm sharing them with you. So next slide. So just a few key points about Florida's program. As I mentioned already, it is a statewide program. It's industry sponsored. It's GNJ, which is group non-joint. So because the solar industry in Florida is not unionized and Florida is a right to work state, it is a non-union program. And I do want to, though, highlight that we worked very closely with our Central Florida IBEW chapter, who has a union-based joint apprenticeship training committee, and we got their full support to develop this separate program. And part of the reason for that is because the solar contractor license does include solar thermal. We have a very robust solar pool heating market in Florida. And so, you know, electricians don't want to learn about solar thermal. So, and we do have companies in Florida, solar companies that only do PV, but their apprentices are going to have to learn about both. And, but, you know, clearly the majority of the training is geared towards PV, but we do include thermal. It's also primarily a residential small commercial training program. The solar contractor license, you have to get into some really serious subcontracting when you get into the larger systems. And so our apprenticeship program is probably not going to be used much for the federal incentives, because most of the companies in Florida are doing, you know, residential, small commercial. We have, like I said, another organization that does have a utility scale apprenticeship program that they've developed that will definitely be able to take advantage of the federal incentives. We do have classroom and virtual learning options. Right now we're partnering with St. Pete College over on the west coast of Florida. They're developing a classroom training model that they will be sharing with other community colleges in the state of Florida. And Bill also mentioned, or no, actually, Matt, I believe you mentioned the mentor journey worker for on-the-job training. In Florida, because our apprenticeship program falls within the construction field, the ratio of apprentices to journey workers is 1-to-1. And so the mentor journey worker has to supervise that person over the 2 years, 2,000 hours a year of on-the-job training. So it's 2 years of classroom training and 2 years of on-the-job training. And so it is a time-based program, which is also, I think, one of the ways that we're able to get our program approved. I do know the Solar Energy Industries Association has attempted to get a national program approved through the U.S. Department of Labor, but it was competency-based and it was rejected. So I don't know if that made a difference, but ours is clearly time-based. It also is the method of recruiting the apprentices is called intent to hire. So basically the employer hires the apprentice and submits their application to the apprenticeship committee for approval. So we don't have a field of people that are out looking for jobs that we run them through the program and then offer them up to employers. They have to have a job with a participating employer in order to become an apprentice in the program. Let's see. Those are the high points of ours. And again, you know, when it comes time to Q&A, I'll be happy to respond.
Well, helpful and good to hear. And I think I saw Bill shaking his head and nodding at a few commonalities. So it's good to hear that there's similar experiences here in Pennsylvania as Florida, and that there's a model that we can look to when considering, you know, what are best options here. And again, great to have such sort of great experience and expertise to review these. So let's appreciate it. And I don't see any questions, but I'm sure there's a lot of questions churning in folks' mind. But to keep the program moving and to wrap us up, I'd like to introduce Allison Deal, the Executive Director for the Clean Energy Center at the Pennsylvania College of Technology. Allison is also joined by a few of her colleagues on the panel today who will help answer questions, Pam Dinchner and Chris Flynn, who have been helpful in constructing this, putting together this webinar. But Allison, I'll let you take it away with the work that you're doing.
Great, thanks, Matt. And also thanks, Sharon, for putting this webinar together. This is an amazing lineup of information, even for me, learning a little bit more about what's happening in other states. So I'm here to talk to you more about what the Clean Energy Center does at Penn College, what we're doing in Pennsylvania, and how we might be able to help approach the apprenticeship discussions happening within the state. Next slide, please. So for those of you that have never heard of us before, the Clean Energy Center is housed in the Pennsylvania College of Technology's Workforce Development Department, which serves over 5,000 participants last fiscal year in clean energy, apprenticeship, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, including plastics, computer skills, transportation, leadership. The Clean Energy Center works in tandem with the Apprenticeship Center at Penn College, which is designed to be a one-stop shop for employer apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship needs, industry-based, non-union. Since 2018, Penn College has been a PA registered apprenticeship sponsor in a variety of innovative advanced manufacturing and healthcare programs. It's a solution to the skills gap that's impacting nearly every industry. And like Bill stated earlier, apprenticeships are an ideal way for individuals to earn as they learn and for companies to attract and retain high-performing individuals. As a sponsor, Penn College is an expert resource for all things apprenticeship, managing all of the administrative work involved in sponsoring a registered program. And Penn College groups apprentices from various local and nationwide businesses into program cohorts, allowing for economies of scale and a variety of delivery dates, times, and options. This allows companies to focus on selecting and mentoring apprentices in best fit programs for their skills gap needs. New occupations and sectors are added to the Apprenticeship Center's portfolio on a regular basis, including some apprenticeships that the Clean Energy Center is pursuing this year, which I'll discuss shortly. Slide. The center provides training and technical assistance to energy efficiency and clean energy sector employers and professionals. Over the last 40 years, the Clean Energy Center has established a reputation as one of the top building science and energy efficiency workforce training providers for both the residential and commercial building sectors in the country. Our training is aligned with employer needs and results in national industry recognized certifications and local careers with stable family sustaining wages. The majority of our students are adults that are employed and are seeking upskilling and certifications relevant to their work, as well as pathways to educational and career advancement. Since our establishment in 1985, we've achieved over 19,000 work enrollments, and we use a blend of delivery methods, including hands-on instruction, online courses, and live virtual training. Our footprint is the Mid-Atlantic. Although we focus heavily on Pennsylvania, we have 2 full-scale hands-on training labs located in Williamsport, central Pennsylvania, and Latrobe, right outside of Pittsburgh. And in 2023, we will open a 3rd lab site in Harrisburg. Slide. So a little bit more specific to solar. Later this year, we're launching a new solar photovoltaic PV workforce training program. It will prepare individuals to achieve the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners NABCEP Photovoltaic Associate Credential, which is considered a gold standard for the solar workforce. This program will consist of a mix of self-paced online courses, which I have listed there, as well as supplemental hands-on training. This is actively in development right now, and we're seeking to develop this program to meet the minimum of the 144 related technical instruction hours that are required for an apprenticeship program. We're seeking industry partners and subject matter experts that can help us develop what will work for Pennsylvania's solar sector, as well as to serve as our instructors around the state. Additionally, we're actively looking for funding opportunities that could provide this type of training or apprenticeship at a reduced cost to employers in Pennsylvania. So I'll share my contact information at the end, and I'd really love to connect to continue that conversation. Slide. Over the past 40 years, we've built a successful model for workforce training for the energy efficiency and broader clean energy sector. Our home energy professional training programs teach industry professionals how to perform home energy assessments and techniques for installing those retrofit measures to increase energy efficiency and as well as the health and safety of people's homes. We're the premier workforce development and training partner for the Pennsylvania Weatherization Assistance Program and the Utility Energy Efficiency Programs. We're one of only about a dozen centers in the country to have all 4 of our home energy professional training programs accredited under the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. Increased production demands as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, coupled with existing worker shortages, have left employers in the space scrambling to find new and innovative ways to attract, hire, train, and retain weatherization workers. So the Clean Energy Center has been tapped to lead that effort within Pennsylvania to define a strategy to rapidly expand the Pennsylvania workforce. And we're doing that in collaboration with home energy efficiency partners and sponsors, including the U.S. Department of Energy, Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, energy utilities, trade associations, workforce development boards, and a network of many community action agencies and housing authorities that perform weatherization, as well as hundreds of Pennsylvania private sector home performance and heating, ventilation, air conditioning contractors. Slide. So this year we're working to roll out within our billing performance sector to register and roll out 2 apprenticeship programs that are based on our existing crew leader and energy auditor training programs and occupations. The first one is weatherization technician occupation. It's designed to be a 12-month apprenticeship for installers and crew leaders. And then the second one is energy specialist. It is designed to be an 18-month apprenticeship for energy auditors. As we build out these apprenticeship programs, we heavily utilize an industry-approved job task analysis for each occupation. And I believe NAPSAP does have several job task analysis that could align well with a solar workforce apprenticeship. Earlier, Bill discussed the 3 parts of an apprenticeship program: sponsor, employer, and related technical instruction provider. For these 2 apprenticeships shown, the Clean Energy Center will serve as both the apprenticeship sponsor as well as the related technical instruction provider for both of those programs, which will allow energy efficiency employers to focus on hiring and mentoring new workers while we handle the paperwork, the stuff that people don't want to handle on the employer side with the sponsorship responsibilities, registering things with the state, reporting data into the RAPID system, as well as providing that technical instruction component that's part of our registered apprenticeship. So these programs are an integral part of employer recruitment and retention strategies, and offers workers a clear opportunity for career advancement, wage progression, while receiving technical and on-the-job training. We're actually going to be hosting an apprenticeship summit in Williamsport on June 13th. I would love to share more information about that with you. It's not, the registration isn't quite out yet. It will be out in February, but it is to provide more information on how apprenticeships work and how employers can participate in one. So please reach out to me if you're interested in attending the Apprenticeship Summit on June 13th. Slide. So our success as a leading workforce training center is deeply rooted in our working relationships with industry stakeholders, employers, state and federal agencies, workforce development boards, nonprofits, community partners. These connections have resulted in a more collaborative approach to the development and delivery of industry-driven training programs and securing funding to support the development of those programs. And to subsidize the cost of delivery to workers, swiftly adapt to the changes and working together on that. So we see this model being scalable within the solar industry and excited to work with employers and decision makers in this space. With that, I will thank you for the opportunity to introduce ourselves, and we'll kick this back over to Matt.
Yes, thank you so much, Allison. Very much appreciate your expertise and sharing the exciting work that you're doing in Pennsylvania and how this is, you know, there are stakeholders in Pennsylvania taking a close look at what we can do to enable, you know, broadening that funnel of workforce development and bringing that funnel closer to the solar industry. So very happy and appreciative of our speakers. Bill Miner, again, thank you so much for being on the call. Colleen, thank you for your expertise. And Allison, thank you for sharing so much more information on what's going on in Pennsylvania. I do want to call out one thing that was listed in the chat by some of our friends at the IBEW. If you are a developer or installer who is interested in meeting the tax incentives, you can hire an IBEW signatory contractor that will comply with the apprenticeship and prevailing wage requirements. Contact a local office, and Ed Hill Jr. had put in a link. I encourage you to take a look at that link as well. To close us out, I'll pass it on to Sharon with our ending notes, and thank you again for everybody's participation.
No, that's all right, Matt. You're doing just fine. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to our speakers. And you know, if you have any comments or questions after this point, let us know. This is an ongoing conversation. I did want to know, I think, you know, Colleen mentioned that Florida has a solar contractor license. We do not have that in Pennsylvania, so I did want to point that out. But again, thanks everyone for being here, and we will send out the slides and the recording to everyone who registered. So good luck to everyone, and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.